Let's bring you this story now. Zimbabwe's main opposition, Citizens Coalition for Change, wants a rerun of last week's elections. The party has also called for mediation from African countries. Let's speak now to Promise Mkhwanazi, a Citizens Coalition for Change spokesperson, who speaks to us now via video link. Mr. Mkhwanazi, thank you very much for your time. You are demanding a rerun of the elections. Set out the reasons, please.
Well, the reasons have been set out already. We are saying that the election did not go according to law. The election was shambolic. Millions of our people were disenfranchised. There was intimidation. There were extrajudicial groupings that were interfering with the electoral process, such as the FAS group, which curiously is just hurriedly congratulated Mr. Mnangagwa. Which basically shows, that these two groups have been working in a cahoots to undermine the electoral process in Zimbabwe and to produce a false outcome. And it is upon these reasons, which, by the way, have already been affirmed to by SADC and other election observer missions in Zimbabwe, both local and international, that the elections did not go according to the laws of Zimbabwe. They cannot meet the standards of a free and fair election in accordance with the laws of Zimbabwe, as well as the SADC guidelines on free and fair elections. As a result, we say that the result that was announced by ZEC, a body which is in dispute in itself, which needs fundamental reforms, they announced a fake result.
Yeah.
And we are saying that there's been no election at all in Zimbabwe. We need a fresh election underwritten by SADC, supervised by the international community, and without ZEC as the arbiter of that election.
Let's try and talk about the avenues that you think exist within Zimbabwe where your cries or your demands will be heard. Are there such avenues that exist, or are you looking to outsiders now to intervene?
No, we're not looking to outsiders. The outsiders can only augment a process that is unfolding in Zimbabwe. They have a role to play. It's not true that SADC has no political jurisdiction to facilitate a soft landing the crisis in Zimbabwe. They've done it before, during the Liberation War, during the constitutional reforms in 2008, as well as during the consummation of the Government of National Unity in 2009. Nonetheless, the primary responsibility to address the problems bedeviling Zimbabwe lies squarely with the Zimbabweans. And we are here. We've developed strategies and modalities to ensure that our citizens find a way, a peaceful and non-violent means to ensure that their vote is respected.
So, where or which avenue specifically within the Zimbabwe legal framework would you say you will turn to now in order for the country to hold a fresh election?
Well, there are many options that we are considering in order to activate, the pressure in Zimbabwe, which is already coming to bear on Mr. Mnangagwa. I think you saw him addressing that he's under immense and intense pressure from the disquiet of the citizens on the ground, and from the fact that he knows that he did not win this election. He is very, very stressed. We have already communicated the political process that we are undertaking. We are saying that our citizens, it is now up to the citizens of Zimbabwe to make sure that their election choices find expression in Zimbabwe. Zimbabweans ought to make sure that they put it out loud and clear that they do not accept the election of Mr. Mnangagwa, and that they are demanding a fresh election which is conducted under the conditions that I just explained to you. Most of the things you will see them unfold on their own. It's an organic, natural reaction of the masses of our people as they respond to the national crisis and the electoral haste that we saw Mr. Mnangagwa undertaking in the past few days.
A number of countries, Mr. Mkhwanazi, in the southern tip of Africa, basically SADC countries, they've already congratulated the people of Zimbabwe for holding an election, a successful election, and counted among them is South Africa. The president saying that, via his office, of course, that if there are any disputes, the people of Zimbabwe must work around those. Does that give you any sense that the African countries you are calling upon will listen to the CCC's cries with a sympathetic ear?
Well, this is not just the CCC. It's the generality of our people. It's civic society groupings, social movements, and local election observers, as well as the SADC itself, by the way. So we note the congratulations by the presidents. We believe that they are premature. These are congratulations that are coming before we have even decided whether we're going to go to court or not. And we thought that Mr. Ramaphosa would have waited for all those processes to unfold. So that shows you that the congratulatory message is curious in itself.
What does that tell you, though, about the democratic processes that SADC ought to adhere to, or should we say SADC countries ought to adhere to? Do you think that Zimbabwe's neighbors are genuinely interested in seeing democratic outcomes in Zimbabwe if, as you say, they've already put out congratulatory messages, as you call them, as you say, those were premature? Do you think that these countries are genuinely interested in democratic outcomes in Zimbabwe's elections? Although, of course, they are going to say that Zimbabwe is a sovereign country. We can't interfere.
No. Look, the countries, we stand by the preliminary report of the SADC election observer missions as the only basis of discussions about the Zimbabwe. Those were the people that were on the ground who saw what happened, and they've put it before SADC. And we expect SADC leaders to take a principled stand, to be objective, to take their time, to hear both sides of the story before they make the kind of remarks that we saw Mr. Ramaphosa and others making. We understand this, as you know, that South Africa is also going into an election, and a couple of other countries in SADC will be having elections very soon. And a reformed and forthright SADC is a problem to them. They want an old members club of protecting each other, even when it undermines the democratic principles set out by themselves in SADC. We know all this, but we are not going to relent. We are going to continue to press, particularly in our domestic terrain. We are going to do everything that is permissible in a democratic society to push for fresh elections in Zimbabwe, an election that will produce a legitimate leader, and an election that even SADC will not be able to ignore.
Let me ask you this final question, Mr. Mkhwanazi, and I'd like you to listen to it quite carefully. The chairperson of the SADC Troika is the president of Zambia, Hakainde Hichilema. He possibly would have found himself in a similar situation in his country whilst he was in the opposition benches. Today, he's the president of that country. Do you think that the president of your party would expect a report which is going to come from SADC, the observer mission that was in your country, and is going to go to his desk? Do you expect him to listen to your cries with a sympathetic ear?
Well, we expect all presidents to listen to our cries because we are a legal and leading party in Zimbabwe. We're a stakeholder in this election, and whoever is going to make an assessment of the election must be in a position to have heard both sides, not just President Hichilema, but indeed all the presidents. We expect them to hear, to give us a platform to explain our side of the story, to give ZANU-PF a platform to explain their side of the story, and come up with a conclusion based on what they would have heard from both sides, which is why I said earlier on that the comments by President Ramaphosa and others are premature and expose their subjectivity in as far as the Zimbabwean question is concerned, which is very unfortunate.
All right. Promise Mkhwanazi is the spokesperson of the Citizens Coalition for Change party, and that is the party that is challenging the outcomes of Zimbabwe's recently held elections.